How are you guys doing? Today is Thursday, March 11th, 2021, out here in this quarantine. I'm James Sims, and for this episode of The Elite, I'm going to do an individual profile on Anthony Davis, the elite starting power forward for the Los Angeles Lakers, who is most recently coming off of his very first NBA championship win. And I guess with this profile, I'm going to let the numbers and the accolades and the achievements that he's achieved up into this day speak for themselves as to why I believe that he is an elite player that stands out from the rest, especially for the 2021 calendar year. With that said, if you are unfamiliar with Anthony Davis, he stands at about 6'10". He's a longer wingspan, which makes him incredibly good at the game that he plays. Offensively, he has great footwork. He's very intelligent. He can shoot incredibly well. He's a knockdown shooter from all levels of the court. He can make a shot in a myriad of ways. And on defense, he's one of the best defensive players that you'll ever see. He is a record-breaking shot blocker in college who transitioned it to the pros pretty seamlessly, and he was the NBA Defensive Player of the Year runner-up to a player that also went on to win the MVP last year. So he's in very rare competition on both sides of the basketball court, and I think I think it's about time I get into his profile. So, originally from Chicago, Illinois, he would establish himself as the best prospect in the nation while playing at Perspectives Charter in Chicago. And he would establish himself as a good enough prospect that, of course, first of all, would be taken into the McDonald's All-American game in Chicago. He would put up 14 points in the All-American game, and then he would also get selected to play for the he would also get selected to play for Kentucky with John Calipari would go on to recruit him to go play at Kentucky. Anthony Davis would go play only one season at Kentucky. He would start all 40 of 40 games in a 2011 season where Kentucky would go on to win the championship with a 38-2 record. But of course, in the season itself, Anthony Davis would go on to average 14.2 points, 10.4 rebounds, 1.3 assists, 1.4 steals, and 4.7 blocks, and 32 minutes per game in those 40 games that season. He would shoot 62.3% from the field. He would shoot 15% from three. He would shoot 70.9% from the free throw line as well. And like I said, Kentucky would go all the way to the actual final. And then going on to the end of the season, they would go on to beat Kansas in the very end of it. They beat them 67-59, and after that, Anthony Davis would go on to receive a lot of hardware that season. He was named the SEC Rookie of the Year, the SEC Defensive Player of the Year. He was the SEC Player of the Year as well. He was the NCAA blocks leader because, of course, not random students don't come on and average 4.7 blocks a game, averaging 30 minutes a game. He was also named a first-team All-American. He was the NCAA Final Four Most Outstanding Player. He was the consensus National College Player of the Year. And after that, he would go on to represent the United States in 2012 for the London Olympic Games before he would ever play a game in the NBA. That's, of course, how good he was. And he would go on to win the gold medal in the London Games. So, of course, add all that to his NBA resume, to his legacy, before he even plays a game in the NBA. Because even by then, he only played 1 year in college, but he's already a national champion, a consensus All-American, and a gold medalist in the 2012 Olympics in basketball, which is not a very easy sport to medal in. So, of course, that's what he was doing up through Kentucky. This would lead into him eventually establishing himself as a good enough prospect to be taken with the first overall pick in the 2012 NBA draft. And this was so long ago. This was when the New Orleans Pelicans were the New Orleans Hornets. And Anthony Davis would play his very first season with the Hornets before they changed their name to the Pelicans. But in his very first season in the league, in his age 19 season, he will go on to start 60 of 64 games in a season where the New Orleans Hornets would finish with the second worst record in the Western Conference. They finished at 27-55. That season, Anthony Davis would end up playing 28.8 minutes per game, the only season in his NBA career in which he'd averaged less than 30 minutes played. He averaged 13.5 points, 8.2 rebounds. He averaged an assist, 1.2 steals, 1.8 blocks per game. He shot 51.6% from the field, while also going on to he didn't make a single three all season. He wasn't shooting anything from the 3-point line. He also shot 75% from the free throw line. And then also in 2012, 2013, he would go on to make the all-rookie first team, but he was not named the Rookie of the Year in 2013. But all that would translate into his second year, where Anthony Davis would officially become an all-star in his second year in the league. In 2013, 2014, in his age 20 season, in the debut season of the New Orleans Pelicans after changing their name from the New Orleans Hornets, Anthony Davis would start 66 of 67 games in a season where the Pelicans would finish with the 12th best record in the West, which is a tick higher than the 14th best. They finished with a 34-48 record with 7 more wins than the previous season. In this season, Anthony Davis would go on to average 7 more minutes per game, and those 35 minutes a game, he went up his points per game average from 13.5 to 20.8. His rebounds went up from 8.2 to 10 rebounds per game. His assists went up from 1 assist to 1.6 assists. His steals went up from 1.2 to 1.3. His blocks went from 1.8 to 2.8, and he went on to lead the league in blocks per game, the first time in his career that he had ever done that, all while shooting 51.9% from the field, 22% from 3 on less than 0.1 3-pointers attempted per game this season. And he went on to shoot 79% from the free throw line. And in his second year in the league, after leading the league in blocks for the very first time in his career, he would go on to be named an all-star for the very first time in his career as well. And this would go on to translate into Anthony Davis's third year in the league. In 2014-2015, in his age 21 season, he would start all 68 games in a season where the New Orleans Pelicans would finish with a 45-37 record. With 11 more wins than the previous season, would be the first time that Anthony Davis had ever been on a playoff team. And with this season, this would be, he would go on to up his scoring from 20.8 points to 24.4 points per game. He went on to up his rebounds from 10 to 10.2. He upped his assists from 1.6 to 2.2. He upped his steals from 1.3 to 1.5. And he upped his blocks from 2.8 to 2.9 as he went on to lead the NBA in blocks for the second year in a row, all while shooting 53.5% from the field, 0.83% from the 3-point line, but he was attempting 0.2 threes per game. And he went on to shoot 80% from the foul line, as he would be named to an all-star game for the second time in his career. He would also be named to the all-defensive second team for the first time in his career. He would also be named to the All-NBA first team for the first ever time in his career. As by year 3, Anthony Davis was establishing himself as one of the best all-around players in the NBA, and by making the first team, he established himself as a top 5 player in the NBA by his third season in the league, which by many standings is an accomplishment, considering he did so when he was 22 years old. So this would transition, and of course, once the Pelicans made the playoffs, they went on to lose in the first round to the Warriors, and the Warriors would go on to win the championship that year. Just to give a sense of of how they did in the playoffs. There's a transition into Anthony Davis's age 22 season with the Pelicans. In his 4th year in the league, he would start 61 games in a season where the Pelicans would end up with a 30-52 record, which is 15 less wins than they had won the previous year. But of course, Anthony Davis would go on to average 24.3 points, which is about what he did last year. His rebound numbers went up from 2.2 to 10.3. His assist numbers went down from 2.2 to 1.9. His steals went down from 1.5 to 1.3. His blocks went down from 2.9 to 2, but this would be the third year in a row that he would average at least 2 blocks per game that year. He shot 49.3% from the field. The only season in his career he shot below 50% from the field. He shot 32.4% from three, even though he attempted just under 2 3-pointers per game, and he also went on to shoot 76% from the free throw line. He would go on to be named an All-Star for the second time in his NBA career. And or he would be named an All-Star for the third time in his career, even though the Pelicans would miss the playoffs completely. But he was still continuing to grow as one of the league's best. This would transition into his 2016-2017 season with New Orleans, which would be his age 23 season. He would start all 75 games. He would start all 75 games in a season where the Pelicans would finish with a 34-48 record, which missed the playoffs, but they still had 4 more wins than the previous year. And in this season, Anthony Davis would go on to start all 75 games. He went on to up his scoring average from 24.3 to 28. He went on to up his rebounds from 10.3 to 11.8. He upped his assists from 1.9 to 2.1. His steals hovered at about 1.3, stayed about the same, and his blocks went up from 2 to 2.2, all while shooting 50% from the field, which was an increase from the previous year. His three-point percentage dropped from 32.4 to 29.9, and his free throw percentage went up to about 80.2% from the field. He was also named the All-Star Game MVP, as he was named to his 4th All-Star Game appearance in his 5th season. This season, he would also be named to the All-NBA First Team for the second time in his NBA career, as he would also be named to the All-Defensive Team for the second time in his career. He had never been named to the First Team All-Defensive Team as of yet. But considering he was a 4-time All-Star in his first 5 years, he's continuing to make a name for himself and continuing to grow as one of the best players in basketball. So this would transition into his age 24 season with New Orleans. And in 2017-2018, he would start all 75 of the games that he would play in a season where they would finish with a 48-34 record. They went on to make the playoffs for the second time since he was there, with the best record since he'd been on the team, as they had won 14 more games in the previous season, and they had won 3 more games than they had won the first time they made the playoffs. But once they made the playoffs with Anthony Davis, but before I get to that, within the season itself, he would average 28.1 points per game. He averaged 11.1 rebounds, which is a tick lower than what he had the previous year. He upped his assists from 2.1 to 2.3. His steals went from 1.3 to 1.5. He went from averaging 2.2 blocks to averaging 2.6. That would be the third and the most recent time that he has led the league in blocks. He would do all this while shooting 53.4% from the field, the second highest he shot in his career ever, including this season. He shot 34% from 3 while attempting 2.2 threes per game. This would be the highest 3-point percentage he has ever shot in a season. And he also went on to shoot 82.8% from the free throw line, which at that point was the highest free throw percentage he had ever shot in a season. Once they made the playoffs, the New Orleans Pelicans would go on to beat the Trailblazers in the first round. They swept them, and then they would lose in the semifinals to the Warriors once the Warriors had already had Kevin Durant. But of course, within the season itself, Anthony Davis would go on to be named to the All-NBA First Team for the third time in his career, while also being named to the All-Defensive First Team for the first time in his career. So, of course, he was a top 5 player on offense and defense for the very first time in his career, and this would lead into Anthony Davis's final season with New Orleans, his age 25 season in 2018-2019. He would start all 56 of the games that he would play in a season where the New Orleans Pelicans would finish with a 33-49 record. Overall, they finished with 15 less wins than they did the previous season, and Anthony Davis would play a limited amount of games, one due to injury, and he also wanted to leave New Orleans as soon as possible. But in those 56 games, he would average 33 minutes And in those minutes, his points would at his point average would go down from 28.1 to 25.9. His rebounds went up from 11.1 to 12 rebounds a game. His assists went from 2.3 assists to 3.9 assists a game. His steals went from 1.5 to 1.6. His league-leading 2.6 blocks per game dropped to 2.4, but still it's 2.4. This would go on to be the sixth year in a row that he would lead the league, or there'll be the sixth time in his NBA career he had averaged at least 2 blocks per game. He also went on to shoot 51.7% from the field, 33% from three, and 79.4% from the foul line. And after the Pelicans did not make the playoffs in 2018-2019, he would eventually get moved to Los Angeles in a trade to team up with LeBron James to help them be the most formidable team in the Western Conference. And looking out to how he fared in his most recent full season, in 2019-2020, in his age 26 season, Anthony Davis would start all 62 of the games that he would play for a Lakers team that would finish with a 52-19 record, which of course was much better than the Lakers had done their previous year. They had won 15 more than they won the previous year, despite playing double-digit less games. And the Lakers would go on to finish with the best record in the Western Conference. In this season, Anthony Davis would go on to make his 7th career All-Star game. While averaging 34.4 minutes, he upped his scoring average from 25.9 to 26.1 points per game. His rebound numbers went from 12 rebounds a game to 9.3. This would be the first time in his career since his rookie season he was not averaging a double-double in a season. He went on to average 3.2 assists, which was a tick down from 3.9 the previous year. His steals per game went down from 1.6 to 1.5 as his blocks went down from 2.4 to 2.3. But this would still be yet another season in which he averaged at least 2 blocks per game. This would be the 7th time he had done so, all while shooting 50.3% from the field, which would be the second lowest in his career at the moment. He shot 33% from three, all while averaging 3.5 three-pointers attempted. This would be the first time in his career he averaged over a 3 made per game. He also went on to shoot 84.6% from the foul line, the highest he's ever shot from the foul line in his NBA career. And after this, he will go on to make the All-Star game for the 7th time in his career, in his 8-year career at that point. He made the All-NBA first team for the first time in his career. He would also make the All-Defensive first team, or he made the first team for the 4th time in his career. And he also made the All-Defensive first team for the 2nd time, showing that it wasn't a fluke that he was a top 5 player on offense and a top 5 player on defense, and he's continuing to get better and better. Once they made it to the playoffs, the Los Angeles Lakers would go on to beat the Trailblazers in the first round. After losing the first game, they beat them 4-1. In the second round, they would go on to beat the Houston Rockets in the conference semifinals 4-1 after losing the first game. They were going to meet the Nuggets in the conference finals 4-1, and then they went on to beat the Miami Heat 4-2 in the NBA Finals. LeBron James won the Finals MVP, but of course you would not have done so without Anthony Davis contributing. And of course, throughout the entire playoffs, he would go on to finish with averaging 27.7 points per game, alongside 9.7 rebounds, averaging over a steal, and averaging over a block per game through every single game in the playoffs. And then just like that, his legacy is continuing to grow, as to add on to his one-and-done college championship, he now has an NBA championship within his first year of joining the Los Angeles Lakers. And as of right now, he is a reigning champion in the NBA. And if we're looking into what he's doing currently with the Los Angeles Lakers, right, so far he started all 23 of the games he's played for the Los Angeles Lakers this season. He's dealing with a calf and an Achilles injury. But so far, he's played 23 games for the Lakers. The Lakers are currently sitting with the 3rd best record in the Western Conference. They're currently sitting at 24-13. They sit a game behind the 2nd place Phoenix Suns. and half a game ahead of the fourth place Los Angeles Clippers. As they have lost their last 2 games and 7 of their last 10, especially without Anthony Davis in the lineup in the roster. But with that said, Anthony Davis is still a very big contributor to this team. And also, it's worth mentioning that the Brooklyn Nets recently added Blake Griffin to their already formidable big three plus DeAndre Jordan to try to see if they can take the title away from the Los Angeles Lakers. But with that said, I think that the accomplishments and accolades that Anthony Davis has accomplished this year are just more. I mean, they speak more than enough for what he's done. And even looking into what he's doing this year, with the 23 games he's played, he's averaging 22.5 points, 8.4 rebounds, 3 assists, 1.3 steals, and 1.8 blocks. All of those numbers are just ticks below what he did last year because he's now averaging 2 minutes less than he did the previous year. But this season, he's shooting 53.3% from the field this year, which is the second highest he's ever put up in a season in his career. He's shooting 29.3% from 3. All this while shooting at least 2.5 threes per game. That's the lowest of the 4 seasons that he's shot at least 2 threes a game, and he's also shooting 71% from the free throw line. So I think once he gets back, he's still one of the most formidable players in the NBA. And now that he's a champion, he's definitely a player that is going to be disrespected less and less through his career. But with that said, I want to thank everyone for listening to all 22 minutes of this piece. I hope all is well. I want to wish Anthony Davis a happy 28th birthday. He is officially a champion, and if you ever get a chance, check out AD. He's wearing number 3 for the Los Angeles Lakers when he gets a chance to come back, and I know that when he gets a chance to come back, the Lakers will still be a team that will be a very tough to beat in the playoffs because they have a player who has been 2 times, or at least who has more than once been recognized as a top 5 player in the NBA offensively and a top 5 player in the NBA defensively. With that said, I want to thank everyone once again for listening to my piece. I hope all is well, and I will catch you tomorrow, Friday, March 12th, with the elite segments and everything that happens today. With that said, I want to thank you once again for listening to my piece. I hope all is well, and I'll catch you tomorrow. Peace out, and happy birthday, Anthony Davis.